Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. Before we get started with today's episode, I want to tell you guys about the directory. I know I've talked about it before, but the directory is the only spot on the internet where you can connect and hire freelancers and contractors who are agriculture or Western based. You can find anything from graphic designers to photographers to business coaches, copywriters, event speakers, social media managers, web designers, videographers, bookkeepers, accountants, marketing agencies, and that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of all the businesses and entrepreneurs who are listed. And as I mentioned before, they all have businesses that focus on the agriculture or Western industries. They get what you do because that's what they do. They understand all the little details that make ag, Western, and the equine industries what they are. So the next time you need to find somebody, instead of making an I'm looking for post on Facebook, just use the directory. You can search by category, location, type of program they need to work in. Any way you can think of needing to search, you can do it. And it has been game-changing for a lot of the businesses who are listed. I just got an email yesterday from someone who told me she had been speaking pro bono, but she wanted to make speaking a personal revenue stream this year and really go all in. She created a profile on the directory, and through that, she booked her very first paid speaking opportunity. Is that not the coolest thing? And that's not the only success story that we've seen, but I will say no matter how many of them we hear, every single one of them is so rewarding, not just to me, but to our entire team. If you're an entrepreneur or a business and you want to be listed in the directory, all you have to do is create an account, fill out your profile, and then you can pay monthly or annually. There are new entrepreneurs and businesses joining every day, which is awesome for those of you who are using the platform to search. Whether you're somebody who's looking to hire a freelancer or a contractor, or you're one who is looking to be found by new clients and customers, you guys can go to ofthewest.co/directory to find out more. That's ofthewest.co/directory. Well, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of Leaders of the West. Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Paige Champion. She is a former Olympic, yeah, you heard that right, Olympic figure skater. She made it to the 2014 Sochi, Russia Games. She is a peak performance coach, and she is also a wife and mom. Her husband, Richmond Champion, is a pro bareback rider. So chances are you have seen Paige, whether it's online, at a rodeo, maybe you've seen her on the ice. She's also a mom to Forrest, who was born last fall. So as you can imagine, Paige has her hands full, wife, mom, business owner. That is very similar to a lot of our listeners. Obviously, that's very similar to me as well. And today we talk a lot about goal setting, mindset, productivity, all of the things that Paige focuses on in her coaching, but then also how those applied to her life as an Olympian and how crucial those elements were to her success. This is a really great episode. I absolutely loved it. I know you guys are going to love it. Paige is somebody who just radiates positivity and has so much charisma, and you're going to love her personality if you don't already. But here we are, the one and only Paige Champion. Paige, thank you for joining us today. We gave the details as to who you are and all the things that you've done ahead of this, but I want to hear it from you first. So let's tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience as an Olympic figure skater, and where you're at now.
Yeah. Oh, man. Let me just take up the full hour giving you my story. With that one question. Yeah, so the first, I'm going to call it like first chapter of my life was as a figure skater. I started skating when I was 4 years old. I became competitive when I was 9 or 10, started skating pairs, which is when you skate with a partner. And I was the gal that got lifted above the guy's head and chucked across the ice. I started skating pairs when I was 15. And my partner, Rudy, myself, and my coach, Patty, we really just taught ourselves the world of pairs figure skating. None of us had ever really done it before. We were very much a self-taught, self-made team. We competed for Canada. Gosh, I want to say like for 6 of those 9 years together, and qualified for the Olympics in 2014, which was an incredible life-changing experience. I retired from the Olympics and figure skating shortly after that. Took a few years to figure out what life was like outside of an extreme bubble world that I lived in when I was training for the Olympics, and eventually realized that I just wanted to utilize the lessons and experiences I had acquired over the years in such a high performance culture to help other driven and passionate people pursue their dreams. And so using my education in coaching, I started my own business. I'm a peak performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I really just get to help people optimize their strategies and their mindset and their habits to create stronger structures and systems in their businesses to get better results. So that is me in a nutshell.
Okay, well, I do have to walk back a little bit because I told you ahead of this that I felt like a jerk for not knowing this. You grew up on a ranch in Canada. I had no idea. I thought that you were like married an athlete, and now here we are. This is your first burst on the rodeo scene, and I was mistaken. So tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, so I grew up on a ranch. My dad was a professional bull rider up in Canada primarily. He and my mom have a rodeo company, and so I grew up in the rodeo industry. I grew up riding horses, chasing and sorting bucking horses every single week before we went to the rodeos. I grew up going to rodeos every single weekend as a kiddo. When I was like very young, all that I wanted to be in the whole wide world was either a trick rider or a barrel racer. I got a barrel horse. We were trying one out when I was around 9, and it was around the exact same time that I was becoming a little bit more involved and competitive in figure skating and started training in the summers. And my parents pretty much just said, you can't do both. Like, these are both, you have to be very involved, you have to be very committed. And so you have to pick which route you want to go. And there was something about figure skating that really spoke to me. I always figured I could come back and be a barrel racer at 60 years old if I wanted to. I'm not going to.
I kind of want to see you crack out at this. I think that there should totally be Paige Champion entered in the next rodeo. I'm here for this.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's down the road, but currently not on the docket.
Understandably so, because you are so right. Like, when you're going to do things at such a high level, you really do have to be very like one trick pony, very centrally focused on what it is that you're doing. So the Olympics, they kick off in 10 days. Because you're the first Olympian that I've ever talked to, let's talk a little bit more about what those days looked like, because it is very intense, very serious. Like, I mean, you are a professional athlete, more so than we necessarily. I feel like when we think of professional athletes, obviously we're thinking like rodeo or maybe on the Western sports side of things. And I'm not saying that they're not athletes, because I firmly believe they are. But the Olympic level is a whole other ballgame.
Yeah, it's such a unique system or like culture of sport because it happens every 4 years. So that in itself is so different in how you have to approach that as a goal. Because if you miss it once, you don't just get to try it again the next year. It's waiting another 4 years, which just, it changes the entire dynamics. So I think the word that you used, intense, is 100% accurate. And you really have to treat it as if it's the only thing in the world that matters, because you only get the one shot in that 4-year span. So yeah, what do you want to know about it? I'm happy to talk about back then.
So when you went to the Olympics, kind of what do those days look like? Like, how much of it is working out and practicing and competing? Like, what was that like?
At the actual games?
Yes.
Oh yeah. The Olympics, I mean, it's this bubble world that's unlike anything else. I always tell everyone, if you get the chance to go to the Olympics, whether it be as an athlete or a spectator or a volunteer or a coach, like whatever capacity, go and experience it and take it in, because it's so unique. And so as an athlete, we competed twice. We have a short program and a long program in figure skating. So we competed twice, and we showed up about a week and a half prior to competing. It was about a week before opening ceremonies took place. And part of that reason was just to acclimate to the timing. We were in Russia, and so time of day was totally different. We wanted to get used to the food. You want to get used to just the energy and the excitement that was there, and really just kind of get your legs back underneath you after traveling internationally. So in the week leading up to week and a half leading up to our competition, we would train twice a day on ice for 45 minutes, which is way less. I mean, I think it was actually 30 to 45 minutes, which is way less than what we would ever train back home. So it was almost like a little mini holiday. You showed up, you had your 2 sessions that were 30 minutes to 45 minutes. You went in there, you got your stuff done, and you got off the ice. Other than you had judges watching you, figure skating is a very subjective sport, and it's not predetermined, but you definitely know that the judges are pre-forming some opinions. And so every time you stepped on the ice, you were there to put on a show. You were there to entertain. You were there to wow. You were there to really help cement your position in kind of like the pre-competition state.
That is fascinating to me that judges are there even when you're not competing, they're watching you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, everything. There's a tech panel. So the tech panel is watching and analyzing all the different details and levels of the elements that we were performing so that they were all familiar with what the game plan was, what we were wanting to go and execute. And so on the day of competition, they're not having to stumble and analyze as much. They're like, we know that was supposed to be a level 4 lift. They missed a hand. It's a level 3. And so it makes it easier on their end. Just puts more pressure on us to show up in the practice arena to really set the scene for what we want to have go down.
But that would be stressful because practice isn't really practice. Like, it's not behind closed doors. Like, you're always doing it in front of people. That would have to be stressful.
I mean, that's what you're there for. That's like, it's pressure, right? It's you're there to perform. You're there to wow. You are a competitor. Every single practice was an opportunity to go out and like win the practice in some sense. And so rather than stressful, I think I fed off of that. I'm like such a show pony. I loved when people were watching me. I always like stepped up my game. And so I loved practicing when people were watching me. So we would practice twice. We would go to the gym. Training at this point in time is just so subdued. We know that we're leading into a real peak moment. And so it was really just about maintaining, getting ourselves into the state where we felt confident when we stepped on the ice. So while we were busy and still training leading up to when we actually got to compete, it was such a holiday compared to the training leading up to it.
The hours and hours. Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, well, that's interesting. So obviously it makes sense that you are now a peak performance coach, that really your work revolves around goal setting and mindset and productivity.
Yeah.
All of that you learned as an Olympic athlete. So tell me, let's kind of backtrack a little bit there. How important were those elements and how did they apply to your life then and how you use them now?
Yeah, as an athlete, this was underlying one of the keys to my success. As an athlete training to go to the Olympics, the day in, day out activities are so important and also so boring, right? Like we had 2 programs that we trained and we did them every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And it was being able to show up every single day with a purpose and a plan that we knew was feeding into that bigger goal of making the Olympics and competing as our best there, as well as helping us every single day buy into the vision enough to care to be better. Because it would have been very easy to show up and to slough off the work. It would have been really easy to show off, to go through the motions, but that's not the work that really creates success. And so the habits, the mindset that I cultivated as an athlete is what I've taken into life as an entrepreneur now. And I do believe that it is one of the things that makes people successful, is having a really clear plan of action so that you can show up every day and buy into your vision and make the work that you're doing today really matter and really count for something.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, so you talked a little bit, you called yourself a show pony, which I love. How did you or do you deal with nerves before competing? Or did you ever have nerves?
Oh, yeah. No, I was a show pony, but I was also a head case. So I started working with a sports psychologist when I was 15. I was a head case in the sense I was a perfectionist. I was really hard on myself. And we say these things so often, like, I'm a perfectionist, like nothing's ever good enough for me. And it sounds really great, but it's actually quite debilitating when you're in the moment because all you're really doing is stealing your own momentum, robbing yourself of your confidence. And because I was stuck in this perfectionist loop where I was really hard on myself, I would end up creating issues for myself that would lead to a lack of performance. So I started working with a sports psychologist at a really young age to help me learn how to work with myself, who helped me to use my mind as a tool and helped me to really elevate my skill set mentally so that every new level that I reached physically, I was ready and capable to take on the level of responsibility of being my best there. And so I would get incredibly nervous before competitions. Absolutely. That's a part of the process. It means that you care and it means that you're energized and excited. And it means that like physiologically your systems are elevated. And I just learned how to capture and control those nerves so that that energy worked for me, so that it elevated my performance, so that I would show up and compete better than I ever practiced even.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, since you've spent so much time with a sports psychologist, do you ever give any tips to your husband out of curiosity? Like, do you guys, I mean, that's got to be, he's got this little sidekick that is full of information.
Yeah, I laugh because, I mean, now we've got such a great relationship and an open conversation in this area. When we first started dating, I remember I would try to like ask some questions or like, why did we do this? And he was very much like, oh, if things aren't going well, I'm just going to change my socks and everything will be better, you know? And when that wouldn't work, he was very confused. And so, I mean, he says it better than me, but he'll be like, I pushed her away for so long. And then I'd be on the back of the bucking chute somewhere and I would hear this voice in my head and I'd be doing something different and I'd feel better. And I'd be like, dang it, like Paige is winning. She's making changes. And, and eventually he got over that fact. And now we are able to have really awesome conversations about him competing where hopefully I'm adding some value to his life.
Well, I'm sure you are. That's hilarious to me. That really is like the perfect little situation there. Okay, so obviously goal setting, huge piece of what you do now on the coaching side of things, but huge piece of what it takes to be an Olympian. You set that goal, but then how do you set these big yet attainable goals? Because that's something I see a lot of people maybe like they set these big goals and then they don't actually have the plan to get there. Or they set goals that they know they're going to reach because it's like the confidence booster, but that's not really a goal. If you know you're going to reach it, that's not a goal. Yeah. Like you got to set it out there far enough to where you have to like actually work to swim to it, if you will.
Yeah. I just am such a big believer in the power of goal setting. And I truly believe that people who say that goal setting doesn't work, they just aren't doing it in a manner that sets you up for success. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's a combination of two different types of goals. So one is what I call outcome goals. These are very milestone related. They're income related. They are a result that you see, that you want for yourself, and that you know that you can push yourself to achieve. I say that with all outcome goals, you do need time and effort involved to reach it. Like you said, meaning I can't just go out tomorrow and achieve the thing. There needs to be some time spent working on it. There needs to be some effort poured into this outcome goal. But I want you to be able to visualize it and see it. I want it to be motivating and exciting, a little bit scary, you know what I mean? Where you're like, I don't know, my armpits are sweating if I think about if I can actually accomplish that. Like I want it to be challenging and exciting. But those types of goals are what fire you up, what help you to show up on the days that you don't want to do the work. You can visualize that. You can think of those big goals and you can push yourself to say, no, this matters. What I don't like about those goals, if that's the only type of goal that you're setting, is that often those things are also reliant on external factors, right? So as an athlete, I wanted to win. Of course I wanted to win. That was the goal. But that was reliant on the judges liking my performances. That was reliant on other competitors not being better than me that day. And I realized that if I was focused only on outcome goals, I could show up, skate my absolute best, like blow the roof off my own personal best. and still not hit my outcome goal. And that was really frustrating and that was really disappointing. And that's where I would just kind of struggle with that relationship of like, why set goals if I don't really have the power to show up and feel good about achieving my end of the deal? And so that's when I started focusing on performance goals, which is what I'm going to encourage everyone here to set for yourself as well. But it's taking your outcome goal and it's focusing solely on yourself and saying, if I were to give a 10 out of 10 effort in the pursuit of this goal, what would that look like? If I were to grow and evolve to become the person that was capable of this, what would I be doing differently? And you begin to set goals for yourself that are 100% controllable. They are 100% reliant on you as an individual. You can focus solely on the efforts and the actions that it takes to make those changes. And more times than not, by focusing solely on ourselves, on our growth, on our process, we set ourselves up to achieve the outcome goals. And so it's kind of one of those like superpower duos where I feel like you get really clear on where you want to go. And then we shift our focus into what has to change within yourself to get you there. And I think that with those two, you kind of come pretty unstoppable, really.
Yeah, it's really hard to really work on yourself and then not somehow reach that outcome goal in the process. But if you're so worried about reaching that thing, which there's nothing wrong with those, we all have those, but a lot of little factors come into play and those are far more outside of your control for sure.
Yeah, I just think it puts the power back in your hands. It gives you really clear milestones to focus on for yourself. And when I'm working with clients, like these aren't wishy-washy performance goals. Like, I want to be better at time management. It's like, you got to be more specific than that, right? You have to be really, really specific and clear. You have to have clear metrics of success. You have to be able to identify what that progress really looks like. And then you can just buy into the work, right?
Oh, yes, I love that.
Stuff.
Setting smart goals. That's definitely a key. Okay, so productivity obviously goes hand in hand with goal setting because if you're going to set these goals, you got to stick to it. You got to be productive. And especially for those of us who, like you, work from home, have kids, have all of these other factors in life, it can be hard to be productive or get as much accomplished in a day as you want to because, again, you've got all these outside factors. Let's hear your number one or maybe two hacks for productivity.
Yeah, I think number one, when we're talking about productivity, it's really important to get clear on what that term actually means because it's kind of become a bit of a buzzword where we all want it. It sounds great. Successful people are productive. But what does that mean?
Yeah, like what is it?
Yeah, exactly, right? Is it accomplishing more in a day or is it accomplishing more quality work in a day? Is it making significantly more progress towards an important goal in a day? Like, what does it actually mean? Because once we're clear on what it is that we're talking about, we can actually show up and make changes. And so when I'm talking about productive, I'm talking about making measurable progress towards an important goal. And I think that that's a really important definition because as you said, as all these busy people, we are pulled in so many different directions that we end up just doing busy work. We can work from sun up to sundown and do a lot of things and end the day asking ourselves, what did I actually accomplish today? Right? Where did I make any progress on my goals? Yeah, you're raising your hand because you're like, I get it.
Oh,
I get it too.
We've all been there.
Yeah. And so instead, if you want to be your most productive self, you have to get really clear on what are the most important goals that you want to prioritize. We can't do everything. And so for me, if I'm really going into a season where productivity is important to me, I'm saying, what are the goals that are really important to me? You can't prioritize them all. So I'm going to pick maybe 1 to 2. And I'm going to say, what are my non-negotiables for those 1 to 2 goals today? Really clear outcome. Like, what is the noticeable change that I want to end the day with? And I'm going to schedule those into my day. First things first. Those are non-negotiables. Those are happening whether the world goes crazy and everything blows up in my face. Those things are non-negotiable. I'm showing up. I'm doing those things. Then I'm going to build into my schedule the everything else. Because it's less important, right? Whether the dishes get done at noon after lunch or whether the dishes get done before bed. It's not really changing anything. But if I'm not showing up and recording the podcast that I said I was going to record today so that I can grow my podcast, that is noticeable. And so for me, productivity, get really clear on what it means. It means contributing, making progress towards your actual goals. So number 2, we have to get clear on what are the goals we want to prioritize today and what is the really clear change that you want to accomplish by the end of today. I think that changes the conversation about productivity a lot.
Ooh, I love that. I do this thing where I obviously have my to-do list because again, that's a fine balance. Maybe let me jump back because chances are when you're somebody who you like to be doing things because you are driven and you're a hard worker, which a lot of our listeners are, we equate that to being busy because we don't just like to sit idle, right? None of us are just going to, I got my work done in an hour. I'm going to sit on the couch the rest of the day. Like that's not us, right? But then we have a much easier time to accidentally, maybe even unknowingly flip into that. I'm just going to be busy all day and do all these things and then get into this place of, well, did I actually move the needle for my goals or whatever it is that I'm working for?
Yeah, it almost happens accidentally.
Yes.
I feel like we started off with really good intentions of wanting to get the important work done. But like you said, busy is often glamorized and celebrated in our culture, especially in the Western industry. Like hard work is so important to our way of life. And it is so important to our way of life because ranching and just the Western industry as a whole was built on hard work. Is that we make the mistake of thinking that hard work means working all of the time because that's what we see everyone else doing.
Yeah.
And I really, really want to help change the narrative a little bit here. It's not about working all of the time. It's about the quality of work that you're doing. And you'd be surprised at how you can fill that free time with other rewarding, fulfilling work, whether it's pouring back into your family, whether it's pouring back into yourself, whether it's pouring back into your community. There's a ton of different ways that you can use that time in a rewarding way that feels good, not just like sitting on the couch binging Netflix. When you start to really prioritize and show up for quality work, not just quantity of work. We're better than that. We don't need to work a 9 to 5. We're our own bosses. So I really want people to push themselves to show up, to set up their businesses for a way that gets the important, great work done.
No, and I firmly believe you will fit the container that you give yourself. So if you say, I have got to get this done by Friday and it's a Monday, chances are you're probably not going to start it till Friday afternoon and you'll get it done by Friday. Yes. But if you said, I'm going to get this, my deadline is in an hour, then you'd get it done in an hour.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to that quality over quantity. Do I really need to be here for 8 hours in a day? Could I maybe get it done in 4? If you were diligent about it, yeah, you probably could.
Yeah. Exactly. It's honestly one of the reasons why when I work with all of my one-to-one clients is we start with clearly defining what success looks like and means to you. I think that often we end up buying into and working our buns off for this really blurry definition of success. It's make money and be happy, successful and happy and I don't know, And instead it's no, work your buns off for what really matters in your life. So if you were living a 10 out of 10 life, if you had the courage to actually stop and say, this is the success that I want to show up for. It's having this beautiful business where I am waking up every day about something that I'm passionate doing. I'm positively impacting the people that I get to work with. Maybe you have a team of people, so you're helping provide for other people's family, giving them opportunities. I want to be fun and adventurous and have time spent with my family. I want to be a mom who's present. You get to define what success means to you. And if we're clear on that, then we can start to set the goals that reinforce that. We can set the boundaries that reinforce that. We can create your schedule and work-life rhythms in the way that support that so that you're feeling successful, you're happy, you have purpose in your life, and you've worked your butt off to create the life that you're really wanting. That's something that I think too many people skip past is we don't stop and actually ask ourselves, well, what would success look like to me if I was doing it all? If I had it all, And that's where you got to start. You got to start with that, you know?
Yeah. I encourage our listeners, maybe take some time today and figure out what is your definition of success.
Yeah.
Because I think you're going to be shocked. I would assume for most people, it's going to take them a little bit longer to put together than initially anticipated.
Yes. Yeah. But it's a question worth sitting with.
It is. Okay. Let's talk about peak performance. As a relatively new mom, you guys added Forrest to the crew last fall. Nothing is better than having kids. It really is the best thing in the world. But as a high achiever, I personally will tell you that it was challenging for me to find that new groove because kids are this new thing and they're needy and they cry at like the most inopportune times, right? And if again, like it goes back to this idea of like being busy and what you accomplish in a day, if that's what you hang your hat on, it can be tough to find that balance as a new mom because your life has changed. So what's some advice that you can give to moms out there, or maybe those who are going to be new moms or aren't moms and they're still kind of struggling to find their balance? What would you say?
My gosh. I feel like I'm still so in it myself, figuring out. I'm like, I'm not the person you should come to for advice as a new mom.
But because you are such a high achiever and a high performer, you get this struggle that a lot of people have. And I understand why it takes some women years. Hell, I'm 6 years into this journey and it's still not easy.
Yeah, it's not. And maybe easy isn't actually the goal that we're all working towards, you know? I think for myself, I really struggled with typically in my life up to that point, I could work to figure out what worked, right? A plus B equals C. And with a kiddo, especially in that newborn phase, we'd have a good day where we did A and we did B and then C was awesome, right? We got a good night's sleep. Everyone was happy. And the next day it was like, okay, cool. Execute the plan. And none of the plan worked. And I struggled so hard with just the lack of control, the lack of consistency. I was like, what is going on? Why isn't this working? You know? And so I think the first piece of advice as like anyone, a high achiever, is just to slow down and to expect less. Like just let yourself be, let yourself learn, let it be a little bit of I don't want to say science experiment, but an experiment of sorts of just slowing down and letting things go. Richmond and I would go on a walk almost every single day. One, because Forrest would actually sleep for a significant period of time if we were moving. Like I think we were both walking 20 to 30,000 steps a day at the beginning. So we would go on these walks and we would ask each other, what's your win for today? Because again, we're both high achievers. We got to end a day with a win. And the wins would be so simple at first. Like, I would really like a shower. Okay, great. Or like, I would really like to get in the gym. That's Richmond. And we would help each other to get that one win for the day so that we were feeling like we had accomplished a thing for ourselves. That was really huge as a high achiever, is really just lowering the standards, but still prioritizing myself every single day in some capacity. And that's been relevant in every phase. So he's 8 months old now, or I guess he'd be older by the time this comes out. And I'm able to show up every single day and prioritize him because I also know that there's a little bit of me in every bit of my day of what's my win for today? What's going to make me feel like I'm productive, that I'm promoting and prioritizing my growth and my goals a little bit. And it's been working somewhat for me anyways. And I end most days feeling fulfilled and like I'm making progress and happy with myself. So yeah, I don't know if that's like relevant or helpful.
I think the same thing. Like, and it's kind of a little bit like counterintuitive, maybe. Like the goal is slow down, kind of like take the goal back a few steps. But then because of that, like you kind of have to let life happen. But then again, it kind of goes back to like the outcome and performance goal. When you start working on yourself, chances are you're going to hit that outcome goal for the most part anyways. It's just realigning that vision of like, okay, what really is important? Where do I need to be? And that refocus is actually going to get you there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing I would say too, like in this phase of life where I'm actively working again, is you have to get really crystal clear on what's going to get the results. There's a principle called the 80-20 principle, which says that 20% of your efforts is what creates 80% of the results that you're going to achieve. And if you can get really critical with how you're spending your time and find the 20% and really focus on that, you're able to still create 80% of the results that you had. And so that's the journey that I'm on right now. I feel like because I have such a limited amount of time to pour into my business, is I'm pushing myself to get really critical with the work I'm doing and how I'm spending my time, so that in the small pockets of time or the windows of time that I get to work on me, I'm using that time the most effective as I possibly can. So I'm using my time to focus on the 20% of my tasks that actually lead to the 80% of the results that I want to achieve for my business. And I am by no means nailing it yet, but it is such a rewarding journey to be on, to constantly be checking in and giving myself the feedback of like, that was a useful way to spend your time, or interesting, that's going to be tasks that I put on future VA list, like a virtual assistant list, because that didn't give you the results that you were looking for. And so for me, it's just a journey of continuing to optimize how I'm spending my time, where I'm pouring my focus and my energy, so that I can continue to grow my business in the way that I want.
On the topic of your business, in case listeners are dying to work with you, which I have a feeling they are at the end of this, who is a good fit? How can they find you? What do you do? How do your programs work? Pimp yourself, sister.
Yeah, sure. So I work almost primarily now with solopreneurs, small business owners who are, I mean, this is the industry. Hard workers, eager for success, and looking for a way to work smarter, not just harder. So you're looking for a way to refine what you're doing, to optimize what you're doing, to elevate the results that you're getting. I would love for you, if you have any interest, questions, come check me out over on Instagram at Paige Lawrence Coaching. I have two primary ways of working with me. One is one-on-one. This is where I get to go. This is my favorite. Dive right into your business with you. We link arms. We set your goals. We work on the systems and the structure that you need. And we have weekly conversations where we're tackling the issues in your journey together. I think it's super effective. I've had clients do some amazing things on there, go from quitting their jobs to making $500,000 in a year. Like, it's definitely dependent on the person, but we get to pour into your vision and your goals together. And the second way of working with me is a group coaching program. The next one I'll be opening up will be in September. It's called The Arena. This is for someone who's a little bit earlier on in their journey. They'd like to reach their first 6 figures. They're really wanting to learn the ins and the outs of scheduling, goal setting, setting their foundation in their business up for success, and are also looking for a little bit more of a community. So this is us working collectively as a group together. I love it. It's like fun. It's friendly. It's a bit competitive in a good way because I'm a competitive individual. And it's a cool way to just build some accountability and support in your life.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that we include all of those links and handles in the show notes so that those of you who are dying to work with Paige can easily find that information. But before we let you go, we've got to do the rapid fire round. So what's the best piece of business or personal advice that you've ever been given?
Oh my gosh. I love this question, and I always give a different answer. You'd think that the same piece of advice should be the same piece of advice. But today I'm going to say that I heard a quote once, and it said that you're the only person who can tell you, no, you can't do something, and you don't have to listen to yourself. And I love that because it really pushes a person to take ownership of the decisions that you're making, where you're getting your advice from and your feedback from, and a reminder that like you are your own power. You know what's best for you. Trust yourself. Say yes to opportunities and do hard, scary things.
Ooh, I really like that. I had never heard of that one either. That was a good one. I'm glad you shared that. I'm glad that was the advice that you picked to give today.
This little brain of mine, man, I never know where it's going to take me.
Okay, if you could give people any words of wisdom and you knew that they would take them to heart, what would it be?
Any words of wisdom? I would say dream bigger, like set bigger goals. When you think about refining your definition of success, to really push yourself to ask, would a 10 out of 10 life look like? What does it truly look like if you were to have everything that you ever want? And I think that so many of us limit ourselves because of what we see other people around us doing, what we feel like is realistic, what is expected of us. And we only get one life to live, you know? So if you have a dream and a passion and a sense of power, push yourself to really expand what could be possible for you in your own life. That's the only way that you set Olympic-sized goals. It's the only way that you ever end up actualizing them, is if you do it in the first place.
I love that. And I'm going to go off on that for a second because I firmly believe that oftentimes we set the goal and we kind of set it on like the shy side of things. It would be just as easy for us to have a goal that was 5 times bigger than that and still reach it with the same amount of work. My husband and I always joke, if you're going to own 10 cows, you might as well own 100 head of cows because it takes the same amount of work to keep the 10 alive as it does the 100 alive. Where are you going to get a bigger payoff? If you have 100 of them, not if you have 10 of them. It's that same mindset and mentality of if you're going to do it, chances are like go big because it's going to take that same amount of work. And all you're going to get is that bigger result.
Yes, exactly. We're on the same page here, girlfriend.
I love it. Okay. If you could go to dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Oh, man. If I could go to dinner with anybody, I would choose Adele and I would just make her sing to me the entire time.
Oh, I like that. She has the voice of an angel.
I know. I also think that she would be like so funny to just sit and talk with as well. So maybe I would let her talk a little bit, but I'd make her sing a lot.
And her accent, like, oh yeah. I want to be friends with Adele for sure. What is a quote that you lead your life by?
Oh, I've got a few of them. But the first one that comes to mind is safety third. It's a motto in my family. It started off as a joke because my dad and brothers were always in accidents. And so it became like the joke that we would be like, oh, safety third. But I kind of took it and made it my own when I was training for the Olympics as a reminder to take risks, to go out and push yourself outside of your comfort zone, to prioritize the goal and prioritize your growth, not just staying safe in your comfort zone. And so for me, it's always been a really great reminder and kick in the ass to just get out there, push yourself, do the scary thing, and to get better because of it.
Oh, yes. Okay. Last question. Favorite things. Do you have a favorite book, podcast, like a product, service, something in your life that has just changed it and you think more people should know about it?
Favorite things would be my coaching.
Duh.
Favorite books? Gosh, I'm trying to think of ones that have like, I'm such a big book girl. I do love the book 10 times is easier than 2 times, which comes into play for what we were talking about with the 10 cows and to dream bigger. It's a really great book. I also would say The Happiness Advantage. It's a book that I've reread a couple of times. I think it puts a really great shift on the perspective of where happiness fits into the equation and how it can work as a tool in your life, not just a result that you accomplish.
I like that. Do you have like a mom hack or like a product that has saved your life as a mom? How about one of those too?
A really supportive husband. Get yourself a Richmond. I don't think I've cooked like 10% of the meals. Gosh, a mom hack. Oh yeah. There's a product called My Breast Friend. So it's like a nursing pillow, but it's not like the boppy pillow. It actually like has like a seat belt around it and it's so secure. And I struggled with breastfeeding at the beginning, just positioning wise, and I couldn't get Forrest to latch. And I got this table and Forrest latched. Easy peasy. Breastfeeding has been like, I want to say easy, but it has
easier than it was without it. That's awesome. I've never actually heard about that.
I think it was like, I think I saw it on TikTok. So I don't know how long it's even been around, but I saw it and was like, no, I was at a lactation specialist and she's like, we just got these in. You should try it. I love them. And so I did.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, see, that's why I asked this question, because there are those little random like hacks in life that I wish we would have all known about before we did. So, Paige, thank you so much for today. Is there anything else that you want to share? Maybe that we didn't cover? Or?
No, this has been so fun. Thanks for having me on to chit chat.
Okay, well, you guys, of course, we're going to include all of that information where you can find Paige down in the show notes. I know that you guys are dying to work with her, dying to follow her. Not only is she a wealth of information, but you can just tell I have the pleasure of having video right now. You guys unfortunately don't, but she really is just like a ray of peppy sunshine, and I love it. So Paige, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. As always, you guys, you can find us back here next week. We'll see you later.
If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.